So joining us now, MS Now senior national and political reporter Jacob Soboroff, MS Now national reporter Rosa Flores, and Politico White House reporter to talk about the immigration policy broadly, Maya Ward. Jacob, first to you. Give us the story of this father and daughter.
Elvis Tipan Echeverria is a 25-year-old Katie from Ecuador, and he came here 2 years ago with his little girl, Chloe. And on January 22nd, they were driving around going to get some fruit, and they got followed back to their house into this alley. It turns out we just happened to be driving by, myself and Connor Barrick, our photographer, looked over to the left. We saw all these ice watchers that you see on your screen right there. We didn't know who was there. I mean, it looked like a massive targeted operation for, as they say, the so-called worst of the worst. They deployed flashbang grenades. The whistles were blowing by the ice watchers. You can see in my hand I have a gas mask, worried about what was going to ultimately happen there. There were people from the Federal Bureau of Prisons as well as the Border Patrol on the scene. It turns out they were going after a father and his 2-year-old daughter without any information about who they were or any particular targeted reason why. He says it was racial profiling because he was Latino, and he also believes, like Liam Ramos's parents, Elvis does, that they targeted him and asked Chloe to be given to her mother, Nicole. And this is a video obtained exclusively by Arque Guerrero for MS Now, to bait the mother outside and to arrest her, too. She ultimately didn't come out, but I did want to ask Elvis what he thought about the tactics that were being used when I spoke to him earlier this week. He's now locked up in a county jail in Minnesota. This is what he said. Do you think that they were asking you to call your wife because they wanted to take her too, or would they have given Chloe to her and allowed them both to stay in the house?
Obviously, it was to detain her because she's Latina. They wouldn't have let her take our girl. They wanted all three of us.
Katie, I'd encourage everybody to scan the QR code directly below me on the screen right now, because you can watch our full 7-minute documentary about what transpired here. It comes at a time when there are more kids than ever in immigration custody under the Trump administration. And while 2 stories about children allegedly being used as bait to bring families out doesn't mean that it's a policy or necessarily a practice, these are 2 stories within a single week's time that took place in different parts of Minneapolis when we were there. And we felt it was important to dive deeper and to talk to Elvis himself specifically about what happened there.
Yeah, you also wonder if it's happening elsewhere. We just haven't known about it. We haven't seen video of it. What's going to happen to the family now?
Unfortunately, Elvis has signed his deportation order, and he's going to bring his wife Nicole and Chloe back to Ecuador with him, because, as he says, and you can see it in the film and read about it in our article, that he doesn't want to ever put her through this again. To have 6 masked, heavily armed agents surrounding them, breaking the window, cut her hand during this operation, it'll be a lifetime of trauma, as one senior federal social worker said to me during family separation. Childhood trauma leads to a century of suffering, and he doesn't want her to experience anything like this ever again, so they're going back to Ecuador.
So why did they leave Ecuador to begin with? Are they going back, and are they going to feel okay being there?
He says he's worried about going back, and he doesn't know ultimately what's going to happen to them. They left to come for a better life, and he had an active asylum case, is my understanding, that was ongoing. The federal government has said to us that he was being pursued because he had a felony reentry charge. That means he was deported once and came back again. And what I can tell you is that Elvis has denied that he ever came to the United States more than once and that he's ever been deported before. And I guess what I would say about that is we have heard so much from this administration about the people that they say are not only the worst of the worst, but that they are going after, that it's hard to give them the benefit of the doubt at this point. Tricia McLaughlin denied that. She said we don't use children as bait. But all I can do is present the facts on the ground as I know them. And I can tell you that Elvis is not looking forward to going back to Ecuador because he came to the United States to seek a better life in the first place.
All right. Rosa, you encountered something interesting down there in Texas. The administration had gone on about how they ended the policy of catch and release, that it was a bad policy, blamed the Biden administration for using it. What did you discover?
Well, what's fascinating, Katie, is that under the Biden administration, we've heard Republicans talk about catch and release. Well, what our reporting is showing that is apparently happening under the Trump administration is catch, detain, and then release of two different populations. People who have recently crossed the border, who are arrested at the border, detained, and then released. and people in the interior of the country. We've all seen the viral videos of individuals being arrested, detained, and now released. Now, our reporting shows that for the past few weeks, the Trump administration has been dropping off up to 100 migrants to Laredo per day. Again, for the past few weeks, we've been reporting on this. Now, the Texas Governor Greg Abbott has been very critical of the Biden administration for these practices, for dropping off migrants in cities in this state. So in holding him accountable, I asked him, well, what about the Trump administration doing the same thing now? Here's what I asked. Take a listen.
Governor, we've learned that the federal government has been dropping off migrants here in Laredo for the past few weeks. And I'm wondering if the Trump administration has coordinated with you about those drop-offs.
I've had no information or conversation, whatever, about dropping them off here. All I can tell you is this, not knowing the extent to what you're talking about, even not knowing that, I can tell you for a fact, there are fewer being dropped off now than there were 2 years ago under the prior administration.
Now, Katie, I followed up and said and asked the governor, are you going to extend the same criticism that you had for the Biden administration now to the Trump administration for doing the exact same thing? He dodged the question, and he said again that he didn't know anything about these drop-offs. I should add that we reached out to ICE and CBP about our reporting and have not heard back. We reached out to DHS and we did hear back, but they didn't answer any of our specific questions, Katie.
Do you have numbers on how many people are being taken, detained, and then dropped off?
From our reporting, the latest that we have is actually from U.S. Congressman Henry Cuellar, and that is up to 100 migrants have been dropped off every single day in Laredo for the past few weeks. Now, when we were there for a few hours, Katie, 7 migrants were dropped off. And the thing that stood out to me the most was there was an Afghan woman, a mother of 4 children, who had been arrested by ICE twice in the past few months. So she was arrested, detained, released, and ended up at that shelter in Laredo. And then later, she was again in the interior, arrested, detained, and then released. She was pretty much exhausted by this process, Katie, saying that she was just tired of the federal government rearresting her.
Yeah. So I guess, how are they getting over here? We've been told the border is completely closed, no longer porous. So what's happening at the border?
I'm having a little trouble hearing you, but I believe you're asking me about the arrests on the border. What's happening there is what we've always seen in the past, and that is people are still crossing the border. Several thousand people are still crossing the border. They're getting processed by immigration authorities and then transferred to ICE, Katie. That is the key. Back in the Biden administration, when everybody was talking about catch and release and the Biden administration was criticized for that practice, it was Border Patrol who was arresting at the border and then releasing into border communities. What's different under the Trump administration is that we're seeing this extra step. They are getting arrested at the border when they cross. They're detained for a while, and then at least some individuals are being released. Not just because we've learned this from officials and from individuals in Laredo who have told us about this, but we talked to migrants themselves in those 2 buckets, people who had recently crossed into the United States and also individuals who had been arrested in the interior of the country.
Okay. All right, Maya, let's talk more broadly about immigration policy within the administration. What is the president talking about when he says he wants a softer approach, but also still needs to be tough?
Yeah, I mean, it's a direct response to what we've seen in Minneapolis over the last month. We saw some personnel changes. They obviously moved out Border Patrol Commander Greg Bovino, who was really known for his flashy tactics. They brought in Tom Homan, who has been saying that his goal there is to de-escalate and, move away from some of those tactics. He's admitted to some mistakes. We saw them pull out 700 of the agents this week. But I think when you see the president talk about the soft touch while also saying they still need to be tough on immigration, I mean, it's really an encapsulation of the challenge facing Trump. And frankly, Tom Homan in Minnesota, I mean, you have American citizens who have been killed by these agents. The White House was already on edge with polling showing that the president's support of immigration was slipping. Obviously, Republican criticism in the last month really hit a high in terms of pushback. And so he's responding to that and the concern that things have gone too far and that they're going to hurt themselves with these swing voters, Latino voters, independents, moderates, you name it. But then you also have the immigration hawks in the White House and also on the outside saying, you know, you can't retreat here, that this was one of the central campaign promises for the president, and that if he abandons it, the party's base might also stay home. So that's what's really driving that message in the White